Thank you. Hello, and thank you for joining the HIPAA compliant marketing webinar, 20 tips in 20 minutes. This is part of our LuxSci how-to webinar series, really designed to educate and help people navigate this world of HIPAA compliance, and in today's case, marketing. So we've got a very busy schedule, so we're going to move quickly here. Let's jump right in. I want to start with some quick intros. First, we have the LuxSci Chief Experience Officer, Tom Deeb, joining us. Say hello, Tom.
Hello.
And Phil Sparks, Director of Customer Success on Tom's team as well. Say hello, Phil.
Hi.
Excellent, guys. Thanks for joining. Really, both Tom and Phil, they're on the front lines every day and have really kind of heard and seen it all, I think, when it comes to HIPAA compliant marketing. So you are in good hands. I'm your moderator, Pete Wormter. I look after marketing here at LuxSci. I'm in charge of really keeping things moving and keeping us on time. So again, we're going to talk about HIPAA compliant email marketing 20 tips. And I want to just tell you a little bit about LuxSci for those of you that don't know us before we jump in. So we are a secure healthcare communications provider. We've been in business for more than 20 years, really laser focused on HIPAA compliance and healthcare. We have a suite of products. We're very much known for email, high volume email, and HIPAA compliant email marketing. We also have a secure forms solution and a secure text solution, all HIPAA compliant and all secure. We're really known for encryption, email encryption, and flexibility. So whether you have really stringent compliance and security needs or potentially use cases that require encryption, but with some more flexibility, we can help you do that. We have automated workflows, a really advanced ability to hyper segment and target your campaign. So a tribute to both Phil and Tom. We are known for great customer support, so something we're quite proud of and really an area we really think we beat the competition in as you may be out there looking for solutions. A financially strong and growing company backed by Main Capital. And really, as I mentioned, we've been in business for some time, but we've got some very exciting times ahead of us as this market and the way companies are engaging with patients and customers in the healthcare space is of course very exciting. So having said that, let's jump in. I'm going to start us off here with tip number one, and that is take a deep breath. We're doing this every day, but HIPAA regulations really can be overwhelming. They change from time to time. They're something you really need to stay on top of, especially for marketing campaigns. There's rules and some extra things you need to know about, things like opt-in and so on. That really can, make it a challenge to cover all the bases. So we're going to help you do that today. We always say use a common sense approach. That's a good guiding principle. And of course, engage experts and ask for help. We're here to help today, but beyond this session, you can always reach out to LuxSci really to get any questions answered on HIPAA compliance. So that's tip number one. We're going to keep moving, and I'm going to turn it over to Phil, and we're going to jump in with tip number two.
All right, thanks, Pete. So tip number two, start with a cyber risk assessment. So a cyber risk assessment is the process of identifying, analyzing, and evaluating potential cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities. And this is really the baseline for establishing your security posture. For healthcare organizations or any HIPAA-covered entity, you need to know where your personal health information is and how to protect it. You accomplish this by implementing preventative, detective, and corrective measures that are subject to continuous monitoring and review. You need to make sure that you're prioritizing risks and logging all of your findings in detailed reports.
Indeed, good advice. Thanks for that, Phil. Okay, now we're going to shoot over to Tom, who's going to take the next couple of tips around compliance itself. Tom?
Awesome. So important to understand the consequences of not being compliant with HIPAA, right? So as you look at this slide here, you can see across the across the left to right, there's quite a bit of financial impact to non-compliance. But in addition to that, and really more importantly, important to think through some of the other consequences, right? There may be a data breach. You may experience fines or other legal action, right? The operational disruption of a non-compliant event is huge, right? And then most importantly is that loss of patient trust or that reputational damage that you or your brand may experience from not being careful with HIPAA data.
Indeed. I think, of course, a lot of compliance-oriented issues to think about. But, on the flip side of this, Tom, tell us a little bit, and we know this, but really about the benefits of compliance.
Of course. And this is my favorite part, Pete. The benefits to compliance are huge, right? If you think about email encryption, for example, right? This is what we do here at LuxSci. But email encryption really empowers you to use PHI in your messaging, right? And when you think about that from an actual effectiveness and impact perspective, that allows you to deliver targeted messages that are personalized to an individual, right? You've got segments that are based on a specific need or health condition, right? And when you think about the difference between a generic newsletter and a targeted email campaign to somebody's specific condition, right? There's a very big delta and huge opportunity for you as a provider to really dial up the care and the effectiveness that you're having.
Yeah, I agree, Tom. I mean, I think a great, opportunity often that are missed, I think, because many organizations frankly want to play it safe
Yeah.
and, aren't sure if their solution can indeed encrypt and protect their data. So when there's that uncertainty, I think it's normal for
Hmm.
people to play it safe. But I think with a solution like LuxSci, you can really kind of unleash the power of this data and this
Yeah.
protected health information securely to really, engage at a much higher level. So we're always kind of happy to talk about that. Let's shift over to Phil to talk a little bit about some of, let's say, regulatory and legality related to HIPAA compliant marketing.
Yeah. So, and number one would be what our tip number five is signing a BAA with your email provider. This is a full stop HIPAA compliance requirement. It defines your vendor. What it is, it defines your vendor as a business associate in terms of the agreement. So having a BAA is actually in your best interest as well. A BAA holds your provider to HIPAA security and privacy standards. So this protects you, your vendor, your customers, and your patients, all by ensuring the proper security policies and procedures are implemented when handling their personal health information. And ultimately, a BAA is an agreement. It's between you and your business associate to meet HIPAA compliance requirements.
Indeed, thanks, Phil. And we'll say this again later, but if your email vendor won't sign a BAA, they are not HIPAA compliant. It's really just that simple. And so, real critical piece if you intend to carry out HIPAA compliant marketing campaigns. So, Phil, let's talk a little bit about another critical requirement related to opt-in.
Yeah. So, tip number six, obtain explicit consent and email opt-ins. So, what are we talking about here? So, explicit consent is something that you absolutely need for HIPAA compliance, but it's also it directly impacts your deliverability statistics as well. This is a really important concept. We see it in the industry every single day, playing very important influential factors. So we at LuxSci, we strongly advise implementing a double opt-in policy. All right. So a double opt-in is, for example, when someone subscribes to your newsletter and you send them a confirmation email, that the recipient then needs to enter a code or click a link to confirm their email address. You've probably received one of these before, and you may have thought to yourself, this is annoying, and why do I need to do this twice? So I'll explain. Anyone or any bot can enter an email address into a form, and anyone can also make a spelling mistake. So what a double opt-in accomplishes is it keeps your list clean with good active recipients and valid email addresses, which is key. It also ensures that a real person is in control of the email address they use to sign up. And if you've been in the email marketing business for even just a little while, you're probably aware of how problematic it is to get blacklisted. Spam trap email addresses are email inboxes that are controlled by blacklisting agencies, and they will never be double opted in. Not ever. So if all your email addresses in your contact list are double opted in, you will never have a spam trap in your list. Deploying a double opt-in policy is one of the best ways to protect your organization from landing on a blacklist. And lastly, this authorization, any explicit consent or email opt-ins, it's important to remember this, it has to be stored securely for up to 6 years.
Yeah, it's 6 years, incredible. And we'll talk a little bit about retention policies later on, but that's great advice, really good best practices overall for email opt-in. And I think, Tom, let's kind of keep it along the best practices theme for marketing here and move to tip 7.
Yeah, of course. This is a really important one as you think about the effectiveness of your marketing campaigns. Sending your messages based on a specific milestone or an event is huge, right? We say this all the time in the world, right? Strike while the iron is hot. That's exactly what we're talking about here, right? Making sure that you're getting your communications into an inbox at the right time when somebody needs to receive it, right? You can think about that, some examples here, the flu shot in the fall, right? A product offer, right? Cancer screening reminders, open enrollments, right? All of these come with a seasonality, and being on top of that and making sure that your campaigns are hitting as needed is key, right? But also really important to think about as you're planning your campaigns, right? There are some where it makes sense to do a kind of batch send, right? If you were sending a newsletter or you were sending an FYI reminder, right? That may be a good batch send situation. But there's also an event triggered send that you can consider as well, right? So somebody just came to your office and you want to send an invoice or something along those lines, right? Really important to think about, as you consider should something be an event-driven trigger or just a time-based trigger. Really depends on the specific circumstances.
Indeed, excellent. And timing is obviously critical, but we often talk about kind of that end-to-end healthcare journey.
Yeah.
And really it's not about one-off emails, but likely a chain of emails and perhaps even dynamic kind of workflows that we can orchestrate based on the specific actions users take in their emails. So let's talk a little bit about the importance, Tom, of connecting all of this to really a larger healthcare journey.
Yeah, of course. So, email content is really key to your patient journeys, right? Or your customer experience, whatever the appropriate word is for your organization, right? Think through, some of your own personal experiences where, you don't know what to expect going into a visit. You know that you're going to step into that waiting room and you're going to fill out the clipboard. And, how can you think about, how can we revolutionize this experience, right? And email's a huge piece of that, right? How many times have you walked out of your doctor's office and your doctor, gave you some advice and you were kind of in a, this is a lot to absorb state, right? And how awesome would it be to get a follow-up email after the fact that, really outlines your care plan and helps you adhere to it, right? Really key, as you think about, you know, how can you move the needle from a patient perspective? Your email marketing really can be a huge piece of that puzzle.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, thanks for that, Tom. We need to pick up the pace here a little bit. We're going to turn it over to you, Phil, for tip 9.
Awesome. Yeah, so this tip is concerning encrypting email content and PHI. So you need to ensure that all of your emails containing ePHI are encrypted in transit and at rest. And you need to use strong encryption standards such as TLS 1.2 plus, AES 256, and or PGP and SMIME, not as commonly used. But TLS 1.2 plus, very common, very common. So this kind of segues into my next bit of advice in regards to this tip, and that is, an old adage: work smarter, not harder. So the easiest way to ensure that your email correspondence is encrypted is to utilize TLS encryption with a dynamic, higher form of encryption that will activate if the recipient server does not support TLS, such as a secure web portal. So most email marketing vendors do not even encrypt email content, and you'd be surprised at how quickly this can land you in hot water if they're sending on your behalf and you are a HIPAA covered entity.
Interesting. Very good advice on that, Phil. Thank you very much. Let's stay with you for tip number 10.
Yeah, so tip 10 is segmenting audiences and exposing PHI. So segmentation is a concept that, everybody working in email marketing is familiar with. This is how you target your audience and target your various sub audiences. And so at LuxSci, we focus on maximizing deliverability while simultaneously maintaining a strong HIPAA compliant posture. One of the ways this manifests is in our approach to segmentation. Our tools can be used to build test lists based on very particular behavioral data in your email engagement statistics, including variables such as opens, clicks, conversions, and content, etc. You can segment your audience based on demographic variables, health conditions, or interest data while using consent-based tags without actually labeling the condition. For example, you can segment a portion of your audience based on whether or not someone opted in for diabetes education versus labeling outright, these recipients have diabetes. So you can engage in best practices and policies and procedures that are respectful and mindful of the security needs of your audience.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to the next tip, number 11. Back to you, Tom, but along the lines of lists.
Yeah, of course. Phil mentioned the double opt-in in one of his earlier tips, right? And as you think about kind of starting that process, a secure web form is a huge part of what we're doing here, right? So, two pieces to think about when you think about web forms, right? And HIPAA compliance. So, when you think about data, you have data in transit or data at rest, right? And when you think about, we're going to be collecting this data from a web form, really important that you think about, how can I make sure that we have a HIPAA compliant infrastructure in place to make sure that both at in transit and at rest data are encrypted.
Excellent. Very good. Moving right along, let's talk messaging, one of my favorite topics for tip
Yes.
12.
I love this topic too. So really important that as you think about, how can you dial up the effectiveness of your content and your engagements? Humanizing a message is huge, right? When you think about the limitations that are placed on you, um, in a unencrypted environment, right? You really cannot use PHI. And very important to think about in order to actually humanize this message and make people, feel like it relates to them and click your links and follow your advice. Very important to think about how can you take advantage of an encrypted tool that is going to allow you to include PHI in a message and not create a unnecessary exposure.
Indeed, and I think along those lines, let's personalization is great, but always keeping privacy in mind. So tell us a bit about that, Tom.
Of course. So when you think about, how can you personalize a message without actually violating privacy, right? First of all, very important to think about we using an encrypted tool, right? That is a very, very basic piece here, right? But when you also think about, what else can we do, right? Email produces a ton of data. So you can personalize based on engagements that are actually happening with your messaging, right? Who opened my messages, who's clicking on links, who's doing whatever they're doing, right? Really, this is key, right? And when you think about, how can you use some of the PHI that you have, right? You really can dial into, what a person needs to feel, to become healthy and manage a potential condition.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that, Tom. Phil, let's turn it over to you for some info on authentication protocols.
Right. Thanks, Pete. So, authentication protocols. So, let's trim back some of the technical weeds here and sort of demystify this a little bit. So, when we say authentication protocols, we mean records such as SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. These protocols help in preventing email spoofing and phishing-based email attacks. And they're actually a part of the social responsibility that we all share as a part of the email industry. So, in a nutshell, if you're a sender and you want your emails to land in a recipient's inbox, you need to have these configured. It's something that senders and recipients put into place to sort of hold each other accountable to keep everyone's communications safe. All right. So, in fact, Google and Yahoo, they're two of the biggest influences on the planet, if not the biggest influences on the planet in the email ecosystem right now. They require you to have these in place if you're a bulk sender. So if you don't have them configured for your bulk emails, they're going to go straight to spam if you're emailing Gmail or Yahoo. So as you can
Yeah.
imagine, with Gmail and Yahoo spearheading this initiative, it's very quickly becoming an industry standard. Many other ESPs are falling in line. So in addition, you should also use a dedicated subdomain in tangentially with this for your bulk email sending, especially when using a third-party email platform. Doing so can help protect your root domain from any reputational damage that might occur. As a practice, it keeps your sending domain's configuration neat and orderly, which makes preventative and corrective actions in the future much easier to complete. And also, you got to make sure you document absolutely everything. Any security policy or procedure needs to be clearly and concisely documented in the event of an audit.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. Let's keep moving here. We talked about the 6-year rule before. Tell us a bit about retention and deletion policies, Phil.
Yeah, and this is actually tangential to the last tip a little bit. You have to document every rule, every policy, every procedure, and communication, including emails that contain PHI for a minimum of 6 years. What you want to do is you want to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That's also known as the CIA triad in cybersecurity. So confidentiality, that means protecting information from unauthorized access. Integrity means ensuring information is accurate and unaltered, and availability, that means ensuring information and systems are accessible when needed. And adopting these principles as a foundation for your security posture, those go a long way towards efficiently achieving HIPAA compliance. And when data is no longer needed, this is just the last bit that you need to remember. You can ensure that you have to ensure that it's deleted, and you can do so through implementation of various automated processes as long as the HIPAA compliance requirements are met.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Phil. We are on the home stretch here, Tom. We need to move quickly to stay on time. Let's send it over to you for tip 16.
Of course. So one of my favorite things, right? Test and iterate. That's the really important part here, right? We are sending messaging, we're learning, we're reviewing our statistics, and we're thinking about, how do we make sure our messaging are not trees falling in the woods with nobody there to hear them, right? Very important to think about how can we use these deliverability metrics to our advantage and really get the most out of our messaging.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. And number 17, also one of my favorites.
Yes, building for our long-term engagement, right? Email blasts don't have to be a one-time event, right? I said this earlier, there is so much data that comes from an email engagement. And how can you take advantage of the capabilities of your system to really branch out and make sure you dial into a specific need and carry through a specific engagement plan that really drives your brand's values and brings on that consistent loyal message?
Indeed, thanks for that. And we are going to give this one, I believe, to Phil for training.
Yeah. Yeah, so technical safeguards, I talked a little bit about those in previous slides, but they only take you part of the way there. And ultimately, the strongest and most efficient form of compliance is a combination of technical safeguards and strong policy, which is why training is so important. So conducting regular training sessions on best practices and how to best handle sensitive data and PHI, it's a major asset, and you should also ensure that employees are kept up to date on all the latest cyber threats and warning signs. Also, and this is very, very important, utilize role-based access. only provide access to systems and data if one's job role requires it. The security benefits to this type of policy are really kind of twofold in general terms. It mitigates errors with data that employees might not need access to, but it also mitigates and controls against insider threats, which is actually considered one of the top concerns by security experts.
Yeah, indeed. Really good point on the last one there, Phil. Thanks for that. Tom, we're going to send it back to you to close out on our last two tips.
Very good. So, really important, HIPAA is a living, breathing regulation, right? It changes regularly, it's constantly evolving. And, really important that you think about and you understand how these different moving pieces are going to impact your organization, right? So, we have some great resources on our LuxSci blog and also on the link when you get the slides that really can kind of help you to understand those rule changes as they come up.
Excellent. And last but not least, tip number 20.
This one here is huge. You have to work with a HIPAA compliant email provider if you are a covered entity or a business associate. You have to do it, right? And you have to also understand what obligations fall on you by using a HIPAA compliant vendor, right? So we have there's so many different pieces, right? You need to understand, one is, do I have a BAA in place? If you don't have a BAA in place, it's not HIPAA compliant, right? That hard rule, got to do it. If you don't understand your BAA, you may violate your BAA, right? You've got to understand it. You've got to know the ins and outs of what we're doing here, right? And really important to understand, there are many vendors out in the world that are not HIPAA compliant, right? They'll let you sign up for their services, but they're not HIPAA compliant, right? And very important that the onus does fall on you to ensure that you're using a HIPAA compliant solution that, has certifications and has very high security standards and, it really is looking out for your best interests.
Indeed. Thanks, Tom. I'd add and also provides great customer support, also very
Yes.
key. So that is number 20. We made it. I want to thank our experts, Tom and Phil, for doing the session. A quick reminder, LuxSci, we absolutely do secure HIPAA compliant email and marketing, but we have forms and secure text solutions as well. We're working really with some of the best in the business, both large and small, and again, very proud of the work we do with our customers every day and the recognitions that we receive there. So again, I want to thank you. If you have any questions, absolutely reach out to us. If you're not following us on LinkedIn, please do. We offer lots of educational content and advice there, and it's a great place to get to know LuxSci better. So with that, I thank you for joining the session, and we hope to hear from you soon.